Hello there, sorry from 17 once again. This is my Dead Space 2 Zealot difficulty. No upgrades, no damage, no items, and no shop. This is the 11th chapter, and we're moving towards a sequence that involves stalkers again. So, a couple more frequent encounters with our friends the stalkers, but this coming sequence is probably one of the easiest in the game, because you have a really powerful, advantageous position, and there's not too much else that comes with it. But before you do that, there's going to be a couple of goodies to grab in here. A ton of bodies, ton of shifty situations that make you think things are going to come alive, but then indeed do not come alive, which is always good to see. And then it's going to be followed with a succession of some difficult, not so difficult rooms. One stands out, but I don't know if it's actually in this chapter. I think it is, because I believe that chapter 12 is the drill, right? And that's completely contained to that one section. But here we go. So you immediately see our Jurassic Park brethren here doing what they do best. I throw a barrel at him and he shakes it off. I believe that these guys are now the black variant, which means that they're tougher. Do you see that? So that's the issue that I have with the stalkers just then. I've slowed that piece of footage down. My telekinesis shot and my laser reticle go straight down on his limb. And even when he moves his feet, you can still see his foot in the footage. So in my mind right there, the game robbed me. And it always feels in that moment like, oh wow, I thought I'd hit that. And then it doesn't work. So for the most of this walkthrough where I've recommended not to aim for their legs with the limbs, that's why. It's not because it can't be done, and it's not because it doesn't work, it's just that it sometimes doesn't work. And it's easy to make a mistake if the mechanics you have to rely on do not work. And this is not me saying that they don't work, it's just that they have a tendency to not work. And that's a problem. When you are going for no damage, anything that betrays you is something you need to live without. If I was just playing this normally, trying to get you through it, then it wouldn't matter. Because if I take a hit here or there, it's just the culture of how playing Dead Space works, right? But that's not what we're going for here, we're going for something else. And to achieve excellence in anything, you have to be willing to sacrifice a few things, and that's one of the things that gets left at the wayside. A mechanic that is so awesome and imaginative that seemingly betrays you when you do it against this enemy. So heed my advice, or just become a god and do it and learn how to do it really, really well, and you should be fine. But as always in this walkthrough or run or whatever you want to call it, I'm going to be going back through, grabbing the enemies, picking all the stuff up, making sure I've got as many resources as possible, because there's some tough stuff coming up. The one that jumps out the most is the elevator fight, which I was quite worried about, and I had good reason to be worried about it because there's a lot of spawns. I always do the same thing, right? I come to a section that I know is difficult, and I wonder, was I just a noob when I first did it and it wasn't so bad, and I don't know why I thought it was so bad in my mind, and then I play it and then I underestimate it and it's way worse than I remembered it being, and I know exactly now why I remembered it. And the elevator was exactly that. I thought maybe there'd be 4 or 5 spawns. That was it. There was way more spawns than I remember, and that's why it's stood the test of time in my memory. I'm happy to report I'm going to do it on my second attempt, and the first attempt didn't actually get very far because I got hit by like the first necromorph. So it is kind of a blind elevator run where I'm just 100% on the ball, reacting to everything and kicking ass. And I'm really glad it worked that way, because it's just long enough for you to start not wanting to do it, which is a very fine line between this is awesome, this is intense, and oh god, please stop, I want this to end, I do not want to mess up, it's gone too long. So I think they hit a really good balance coming up. And speaking of balance, throw the balls at the ball sacks and ruin the creature's day, and just be really careful, because once again the fear system raises its head here, and the idea of the audio being suggestive and loud depending on situation is an interesting one, but it can make it sound like these ball sacks are way closer than they are, and it makes you all paranoid because you don't want to walk forward and immediately turn into pastry, which can certainly happen in Dead Space. Another reason why I think permadeath is a difficulty not really suited for these games, because at any situation, if you walk into one of these, you die. and it feels super dirty, super cheap. The only real resolution and rescue from it is to know where they are, and it's not a difficult thing to do to memorize if you've been playing the game a lot, but if you're coming back to it, you know, you don't have that information anymore. That information has been replaced with Pokemon names and porn star names and other unnecessary and unneeded technology that's been imprinted in your brain. But pushing forward, we have more of these creatures. In fact, some of these corridors are kind of interesting because I always got the impression at this point that we were moving towards a more organic life form surroundings. Like I felt like we were perhaps moving into the den or the hive of the creatures, because the walls start taking on this more flesh-like pallor and having all the tubes and the veins and the bulging and everything, and it's all very unsettling. But that's not really the case, is it, when you think about it? It's just for some reason this area is much more corrupted than some of the other places. Like, I wonder if the Sprawl was becoming one of those Brethren moons, but I don't think... Isn't that what the marker has to do? Isn't that how they can communicate convergence? By, I don't know, having them all assemble around the marker, and perhaps then they form the huge star, or the huge planet, or however that system works. By the way, guys, this is the room. This room right here, I'm not going to call it easy, because it's not, but what you're witnessing is a first attempt. And another instance of, I'm really happy I got this on a first attempt. So every time I come to this room on Dead Space 2, I remember it. Bastard, what's that about? But I always remember it in a vague way. I remember it's stuck with me, so there must be something bad about it. But I never quite can get the full idea of what it is that makes this a memorable encounter. And having played it quite recently, obviously, I now remember. This is a large room filled with encounters, and the encounters seem to have an almost random nature to them, even though they're not. A lot of the spawns are preset, a lot of the positions are preset, but it feels like every time you move around this location, somebody new turns up. And it's pukers, it's lurkers, it's exploders, it's slashers, it's everything you can think of turning up all the time. And they give you a lot of tools that can help you out. For instance, there's a bunch of explosives on my right. But this is just one of those rooms that's incredibly intimidating because of how all-encompassingly just the multitude of foes that's going to come for you here is... It's kind of baffling, and I still don't completely understand how the logic of it all works, because there's no other room in the game like this. This is kind of the Dead Space 3 room when you think about it, because in Dead Space 3, some of the encounters in that game, you fought tons of enemies. Whereas in this game, they were always quite modest, they were always well designed, and then you come to this shitfest, and it's just all over the place. And we begin our balcony adventure by taking out a black puker. In front of me is a vent that a lot of the enemies prefer. That vent over there where he came from, and the vent near me, that wasn't the best use of that particular object. If I'd have recorded this again, I would have used his puke to save me that explosive, and I could have used the explosive on something else, and then I wouldn't have had to use that javelin just then, and everything would be gravy. But just the manner of how none of this feels like it has rhyme or reason is the reason I think it is such a memorable fight for me. And I think I'm going to go back to my original walkthrough just to see what spawns I got. But I came over here because I was wondering if the door was going to go back to blue, because then I'd be able to save. And this is a long encounter, and being able to save would have punctuated it in a much more pleasing manner for me, but that's just not how it works. And boom, see that? If that ain't a Dead Space 3 spawn, I don't know what is. Immediately see the exploder in front of me, then a black slasher's behind me, and then a puker is also in front of me. Like, this is the type of thing so far that you would find in a single room, but in this particular place, once again, using... Oh, and a lurker too, just chilling out behind. I'm not really using the items as best as I can here, but it's a testament to the fact that this is a one attempt. You know, sometimes it's a good thing that you get it first time, other times not so much. Because what it's done is I now don't have to learn this room. Traditionally, if I'd have had troubles here, and I would have had to, you know, redo it a few times, I would understand it a lot more than I do. But because I managed to get this done, albeit slightly messy, I was okay with it. Because I know what you were supposed to do. You go down and you pull the battery out, right? And I think you swap the battery for something else. But I couldn't remember the spawns, so instead of messing with the battery, I just kind of moved around the room. And I don't know if that benefited me or hindered me, because this could have all happened when I messed with the battery. Maybe it didn't. I don't rightly know how it functions, but it's one of those circumstances where perhaps getting the battery and replacing it immediately is the best case scenario. Interesting, 2 lurkers. And I'm running away from them because I don't want to just get whipped at, but there's a lurker. Look at that, 2 lurkers over here too. What kind of room is this? Do you see what I mean? It's so weird. Why would they do that? And let's face it, lurkers are not the most dangerous enemy, but they can still hit you. And in a room like this, that's quite large and quite dark, and my terrible aim, being hit is a big thing. It means we have to start again. These enemies have difficulty hitting you when you don't move as well. When you stand still, there seems to be a greater chance of their projectiles to miss you than it is to hit you. It's almost like they've been designed to kind of shoot where you aren't. And if you do move, you put yourself in danger. But as much as that is a strategy, there are also instances where you don't move and they still hit you. So I think the idea of not moving when it comes to being invulnerable against the lurker type enemy is not actually true. It's just RNG. Because when you're on top of the extractor, the big drill section, that is a sequence where you can get the illusion sometimes that you can't be hit if you stand still, because the movement gradually puts you into the safe spots of the projectiles. But it's not true. It's a lie, and it's a strategy built on a lie. And you can get hit, but you kinda don't. And that's the thing. Just though because you don't get hit doesn't mean they can't hit you. It's just one of those things where on that run you had Providence on your side. Speaking of Providence and lurkers, we've got another one here just cruising over. Like, what a strange spawn, right? All those enemies, and now we've got a shit ton of this enemy? I don't think I've ever seen a room with 5 lurkers in it, ever. And if I have, I stand corrected, but, you know, it's weird, right? It's weird that there would be so many of them. And I think there's even an additional spawn once I grab the other battery of something. I'm not entirely certain what it is, but this was a fascinating room. Absolutely fascinating. And it gives you so much stasis. It makes me wonder what they thought you were going to do with it. But I bet for a speedrunner it's a dream, right? You heard it then, did you hear it? I heard something. I don't know what it was. Something's happening somewhere. At some place in time. Oh, there you go. It's a puker. So, of all the things to bump into, Puker's a pretty good one, because you can use him to kill himself. But the amount of times you can miss a Puker's puke and get hit by it and have to reset is kind of funny. Because you know the timing, you know they're not a difficult enemy. There's a baby just then. So this is just like every enemy in the game just chilling out for some reason. Like, can you imagine if they threw a brute at you and like a stalker? Wow. It'd be something else. But now we've got a ton of babies coming our way. And potentially another spawn from these holes. It's just nuts. And I don't really understand the design of this room. I get it's a big room, and I get that they wanted quite a unique showcase of enemy types and uncanny spawns and things. I think they did a great job, because you definitely don't see a room like this in the rest of the game. The only room even close to this is in the government building in Chapter 13, where there's a lot of different enemy types together. But that's a section that makes a lot more sense than this, because you can see the spawn points, and there's only like 3 spawn points. Like, look at this guy. Why the hell is he here? And where did he come from? You know, it's crazy. And something else just spawned as well. Just then, another dude spawned. So I used the Puker's puke to pick up the spew and throw it at his buddy. And now I'm getting bombarded by an incredibly quick black necromorph who, unfortunately, I used way too much ammo on. And watch this! Look at that! How crazy was that? So as happy as I am that I was able to do that and share that with the channel, there's a part of me that was just, I should really do that again. That was messy and crazy, and now I've got 19 bullets left, which is a problem, because this gun doesn't take bullets, right? Dudunts. But moving forward, there's going to be another couple of small environments. Nothing as bad as that room just then. And then you're going to be introduced to another 0G section that really frustrated me. So I think this is where this game ages the most in a moment such as this. It's by no means bad, it's just there's aspects that I wish were different. And you're going to notice, I don't have a lot of ammo right now, and I'm shooting this creature. And there's probably a part of your brain thinking, Chris, what are you doing? There's some really tough stuff coming up. Don't do this, dude. Don't do this. Well, I couldn't do it any other way. Because the game is so broken and stupid in how it works. So let me give you an idea of what you've got to do here, right? You have to move 2 lasers off of a central corridor. To do that, you have to attach 2 flaming fire extinguishers to 2 sections to make them move, and then you have to go through the corridor that you've opened up. The problem is, when you're carrying these things you have to attach, you can't just fire them and they stick to what you want them to stick to. It doesn't work, they bounce off. You have to attach them when it turns green, like that, when it goes into that specific animation. And to do that, you have to float around with it in a slow-ass, stupid speed. And when you do that, you're vulnerable to being hit. I tried this section for about 40 bloody minutes, trying to do it without being hit by the homing, spamming projectile stupid bastard, and I just couldn't do it, because every single time, no matter what I tried, no matter what direction, I got hit by something stupid, and I was getting really, really frustrated, because I think this is a wonderful juxtaposition, actually. The previous room was an example of a crazy gauntlet of enemies. Every kind of enemy you can imagine, coming from spawns you can't imagine because you're not too sure why they're there or where they came from. And I survived it. I took no damage, I took on all the situations. Was it clean? No. Did I get through it? Yes. And then you come to a section like this that you never even remember doing because it's so innocuous and small and insignificant. And I'm here longer than I was some other areas just because I'm stubborn and I don't want to waste bullets. And it all stems from the fact that if you could boost while using kinesis, this section would be fine. But you can't. And that one decision just kind of breaks it for trying to do it in a specific way. And instead you're at the will and the whim of a homing projectile monster that can indefinitely shoot at you. It's not like it does one burst and then 10 seconds later it grows its ball sacks back and fires them again. It just keeps shooting them. Just keep shooting them. Keep shooting them. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. That's all it does. It will not stop until you're dead. It's ridiculous. But we did get a little bit of ammo back then, which is a North Star in a dark sky of intimidating encounters to come. So we now have 25 line cutter shots. Line cutter? Plasma cutter. I don't know what a line cutter is, but it seems like Visceral should sue somebody if they were still in existence. Which is quite interesting, because you know the person who was in charge of... what part of this game were they in charge of? I think they might have been creative director, or maybe art direction. I think it was the art director. This is a beautiful room, by the way. I love this room. So I'll continue that in a moment. So the reason that this room is so sweet is it gives you all the tools you need to kill everything without using your arsenal. So at the beginning, there's going to be a black slasher that I'm going to take out just with the javelins. There's then going to be those 2 lurkers, which I'm going to kill with those explosive rods. Now we have a Mr. Foreskin Man on his way, who I don't have time for this guy. I don't like foreskins. I'm like one of those Jewish guys that likes to take them off. Is there a Jewish guy that likes to take them off, or is that just the person who's in charge of doing that particular strange ritual? I don't know the name of that person, because I'm ignorant of Jewish culture. There you go, guys, I'm a racist. But here comes a puker, so take him out with his own puke, and then as you push forward, there's going to be more spawns that are happening, and we're going to continue to use the rod to get rid of whatever the worst part of the spawn is. And they give you so many that you can pretty much use rods for all of it. It's great. And then for some reason, there's a super sneaky ninja slasher that happens to turn up behind you. But unlike Dead Space 3, where when they're behind you they still clobber you, in this game they like to tickle your shoulder and like brush away some lint from your jacket before they try to murder you. And it gives you a chance to survive, which I really like. And see him just there, just chilling out, trying to scare me. But this is mouse and keyboard, dog, so when I see this happening, I'm like, dude, you ain't standing a chance. If I was on controller, then I would have shit the bed. But mouse and keyboard, see you later, buddy. You never stood a chance, dude. Broke him in half. And I believe that that's the end of the room. But that, to me, is beautiful. Oh, no, we've got another puker. There he is. But what a beautiful room. So many ways to handle it, so many ways to deal with it. It makes you feel really empowered. And there'll be people who play this room and all they do is shoot everything and never even notice the other stuff that existed. Beautiful design. Play how you want to play. And I wish every room was like this. I wish there were these wonderful scenarios that you can set up just by thinking about it a little more. And I love that kind of stuff, I really do. There is an argument, definitely, though, that it can make it a bit too easy with all the explosives, but all you have to do is like, hide them, maybe, or make it the javelins that you have to aim, the projectiles, like the spears. Right, here comes another one of the dudes. Look at that! Look how immaculately placed that is. And something I realised with that instance just then, and I've tested it later on and it does work, if you shoot those explosive rods at the Black Slasher, he will die in 1 plasma cutter shot extra. It puts him right to the threshold. It's a little bit like Nicole later on. If you hit Nicole with the contact beam charged up and upgraded, she will then be killed by 1 plasma cutter shot. So if you're charging to shoot the core, and it seals itself and you don't have enough time, don't fire it off and waste it. Shoot Nicole with it, and then you know all she takes is 1 more hit and you can attack the core again. But of course you want to reload your force gun, what am I calling it? Your contact beam first. If I called it force gun just then, guys, instead of contact beam, I meant contact beam. You want to make sure it's reloaded first, because reloading it during an open marker sequence is a pain in the dick. Nobody likes that. But this is the room where you get the advanced suit, and I must tell you guys, the advanced suit is my favourite Dead Space suit. I adore it. There's just something about it that I think looks amazing. And I'm still kind of angry that you get it so late. I'll never forgive them for that. The damn suit that's on the cover, the best suit, you get at chapter 12, practically, chapter 11. It's so strange, right? It's so strange to me that that's the way they did it. And I have no idea why they did, but they did. And it's one of those heartbreaks that I've had to hold. Gotta hold that L. And of course, you can do New Game Plus and wear it, and on PC, I think you can get it immediately because of the DLC and stuff. But it's one of those things where if I was in that development team, I would have made it so that there was some kind of perhaps node door that was blocked by a very difficult gauntlet of enemies that was optional, but if you did it, you got it. And you could even give us a not that great version of it so that it wasn't all-encompassingly great. And then later on you get the proper solid one that's super sexy. They could have, instead of wearing that stupid Bioshock suit that just doesn't fit the game at all and makes you look like a weird space trooper man, Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine dude. But anyway, there goes everybody's favourite psychopath. I punch his head off because he deserves it, the bitch. Do you know what I really don't like about this as well, as I've come back to it narratively? As his head rolls away. That's amazing. There's a wonderful cutscene coming up where Isaac talks to Ellie and explains that this dude had gone nuts because he was too afraid of his own fears and shit, and he was no use to them now, and he was no use to help them stop the marker, so fundamentally, he wasn't of any use at all. We carried him around for no real reason and discard him because the plot says so, yet Ellie lost an eye to this man because we carried him along for it then to be revealed that he didn't really help. And she's not pissed off. So there's this wonderful moment where Isaac's like, oh yeah, I killed him, he's no longer a use to us, he was too obsessed with his fears, he was never going to help us. And she just goes, okay, I think I'd have punched Isaac, dude. Like, it's probably the worst part of the story for me coming back to the game, because there's just this moment where you're like, oh my god, Ellie lost an eye for that. I feel so bad for her. And then she's just like, okay, what do we do next? And really weird to me. And maybe I've read it wrong. Maybe I didn't hear the cutscene right, because I wasn't watching all the cutscenes. Maybe I missed the subtle context, or the audio file, or the dialogue, or the little fucking ready file somewhere. But if I was Ellie, I'd have been pissed off in that moment, because they kept him around for no other reason than to red herring a bunch of bullshit and have Ellie lose an eye. And I feel like that's just not very good storytelling. But perhaps Ellie's a bigger person than I am, and she forgave him. Which seems ironic considering at the start of Dead Space 3, his inadequacies to face his fears are something she's unwilling to forgive him, and thus she runs off and ends up shagging someone else. Which, I was never happy at that development either, as much as I think Isaac was a massive bitch and should have manned up. But I also felt like the writing there didn't fit the characters. Because let's face it, guys, if you went through what Ellie and Isaac went through on the Sprawl, I think you bonded for life. I really do. Like, I think it's just one of those experiences. No matter what you do on your worst day to each other, it is nothing to even remotely hint at what each other meant to each other to get through such a nightmare. Like, you don't... It's too much trauma to just be like, oh, I hate that you leave the cap off on the toothpaste. I'm leaving you. It just seems really silly. Speaking of silly, this is about to get nuts, and I'm not even reloading my plasma cutter, which is ballsy, Chris. What were you planning? So the reason that this is immaculately designed, guys, is because the majority of the necromorphs here will lose a limb to one shot, and because they're close to you, they do not have their ability, seemingly, to cover distances quickly. They will always kind of shuffle and stalk towards you, and they don't attack instantly. It's incredibly fair and awesome that they have that level of maybe passivity increased just a touch, and then the black dudes turn up and they ruin everything, because those guys are really mean. But you should be sharp enough when they do to deal with them, and I'm just kind of joking about them not obeying the rules. They're just as balanced as well in a lot of ways, because the darker necromorphs are so strong that you notice how strong they are in comparison to an enemy such as this, but this enemy's nothing compared to those guys in the grand scheme of things. And then when they do turn up, they're also a little bit more timid, a little bit less inclined to rip your face off and slash your neck open and stab you in the chest several times. Which, does anybody else feel like that beginning section where that guy who frees you from the straitjacket, not the guy that frees you literally from the straitjacket, but the guy who frees you in the beginning, the very beginning of the game, he dies in the most gratuitously magnificent way, but nobody else gets anything remotely as crazy as that moment. Have you noticed that? So you might have noticed then that I was focusing on the black necromorph for obvious reasons. It's the bigger threat, and that other dude slowly walked up to me to stroke my earlobe before whispering sweet nothings, and then this gets a little bit scary. But do you see how he wasn't super aggro when he started walking? He did his running and his jumping and everything, but he also walked. He wasn't too ridiculous. Such a fair sequence. And you might be thinking, Chris, how the hell did you survive when he ran at you just then and he attacked? That's the perfect balance of this game, and that's why the Leapers stand out to be almost broken tier. Because even that guy, the meanest, nastiest Mike Tyson bitch in this game, who mauls and wrecks and destroys and causes you so much havoc, when he attacks, if you shoot him, you interrupt him. And it's wonderful. It's super wonderful, because it's perfect balance. If you shoot him before he attacks, you will not interrupt him unless you sever a limb. But if you shoot him the moment he starts his attack animation, it ends. There's no active hitbox, there's no lingering hitbox, there's no trading, there's just boom, you stopped him. And if that ain't beautiful, I don't know what is.